is a world premiere. This is a world premiere.
I done been through a whole lot, trial, tribulation, but I know God.
Hey, Reg here, and welcome back to the blog and the return of the Fruitarian. It's day 57 of my 60-day raw food challenge, and I've just been a really, a really great learning experience. I've really been immersing myself in kind of the world of veganism and the especially in terms of the people who are blogging about it, just to see how that the message about veganism is getting out there in the world, and that's through people who are just everyday people who are trying the lifestyle out, and then there are people who have become the spokespeople for veganism, again especially on YouTube, and I'm just I'm finding it really informative and learning a lot about the ways that veganism and ideas about animal cruelty and care of the planet intersect with some of the issues that I've been engaged with for a number of years as someone who's been part of social justice movements and part of the food justice movement through my my role on the board of directors at Added Value, which is an organization that runs a community farm here in my community of Red Hook, Brooklyn. Yesterday, I was checking out the vegan blogs, and I came across Kalel, who is apparently, one of the most, the most viewed bloggers on YouTube. And the video that I watched was the story of how Kalel became a vegan, and I found myself put off a bit just in the first few minutes of this video, specifically during what I guess was the disclaimer, where Kalel says, "I'm not here to attack you or try to make you feel bad. I'm not here to attack you or try to make you feel bad." And going back and watching the video a second time, I realized that that's a little bit insincere, since Kalel ultimately goes into a long talk about the torture, rape, and murder of animals. And I certainly don't imagine that Kalel is naive enough to think that this isn't going to make an audience feel at least disturbed. Although there are likely some people out there who like to hear about these things, you never know. I think it's safe to say that the emotional response intended was on a scale from good to bad, likely meant to be on the bad side. I don't think people were intended to feel good about hearing about these things or seeing some of the images that are presented. I do imagine that it's likely Kalel, based on some of the comments that came later, hadn't really considered that there are people out there who are, who kind of thrive on violence and these disturbing images. They actually kind of look out for them, and although it wasn't the intention, that Kalel in some ways is also providing that audience with something that they're out there looking for, and that's probably not what's being intended. Anyway, Kalel invites anyone who disagrees with the opinion being expressed to leave the channel, saying that if you're too closed-minded of a person to let this information into your mind, then I want to ask you to leave. We don't need your comments about how much you love bacon and steak because it's very insensitive. And then I just noticed that Kalel is the only person in the video, so I did wonder who the we was, if there's maybe it's the production team, or maybe there's a team of people who are part of some group that wasn't mentioned in the video, maybe vegans at large. But since Kalel was the only speaker, it did jump out to me the use of the word we in that context. Then Kalel goes on to talk about how we have been socially conditioned. And so this idea of social conditioning is brought up, but then there's no talk of any studies or surveys or science of any kind to back up the statement, and how exactly this identified we was conditioned. What was that process? who did the conditioning? Who is responsible for the conditioning of this we to feel a certain way? And I guess the viewer is meant to assume that Kalel has done some kind of research to back up these statements, and that we're just meant to take them at face value. I did still wonder who the collective we spoken of. Who was the collective we that's spoken of? So then as the video progresses, Kalel offers a number of hypotheticals and then tells the viewer how the average person would respond. And Kalel conveniently counts self among, the average person. And I found myself reacting, feeling negatively about being told how I was supposed to feel in this hypothetical situation. The last time I checked, there are upwards of 7 billion people on the planet. I mean, at least 6 billion, and maybe I'm off. I kind of get confused about the number, but there are a lot of people in the world, and I haven't met most of them by a long shot. I mean, I'd be challenged to say that I've met everybody on my street. And so I certainly can't speak for how every one of them would react in any type of situation. I can't speak necessarily for what's going to happen, in my house from moment to moment. Not with any sense of like 100% surety, right? And so, I consider myself a pretty unique person, and I think that, everyone that I know is pretty unique. And for as many people as there are in the world, there are as many variations on, what people are like. So how am I to say what is average, or what is the norm among that many possibilities? And how would I have the the vanity to assume that whatever that norm is, that I fall within it, right? So I felt like there was a huge assumption being made by Kalel in that video, and since that assumption was the heart of the argument, it left me feeling like that argument was ultimately, unfounded, which is a shame, because I'm for veganism. Kalel gives an example of like someone beating a dog, and suggests that most people, if they saw a dog being beaten, that they would, somehow come to its aid, and then thus they should do the same for a pig or a cow. And, maybe this is true. Maybe that is how most people would respond, but there's no evidence presented. So how are we meant to assess the viability of that statement, especially, given as an argument for, changing a person's lifestyle? Again, completely unfounded, leaving leaving that argument just completely unsubstantiated, and easily discredited. So I can say that I've experienced seeing women being beaten, men and women. There are videos all over YouTube of people being jumped in public and beaten violently, and that being recorded. There was videotape of Eric Gardner being murdered by the police, and people didn't scream out, stop. I've experienced children being beaten. I was, as a child, there were incidents where I was being beaten in public, and people didn't come to my assistance. So, my personal experience has shown that people will stand by and allow violence to occur. I've certainly seen animals mistreated, and there are people who pay to watch dogs fight. So, this assumption that the average person will step in to defend the innocent is, again, unfounded, and not necessarily based on any lived experience, not based on the lived experience of everyone that I know. Kalel insists that there's nothing acceptable about torturing, raping, and murdering a being that doesn't want to be killed. But our society was built on the torture, rape, and murder of human beings for centuries. Our society is maintained through a continued campaign of torture, rape, and murder of human beings all over the world in order to provide the comforts that we're afforded, and by we, I include myself, just to be able to turn on the electricity, to turn on the water and have fresh water at our disposal, and to have many of our whims satisfied instantaneously. People have to suffer on the planet for us to be able to have those conveniences and those privileges. And Kalel goes on to say, in our heart, in our soul, we know none of it's okay. Again, who is the we Kalel is referring to? And regardless, these things continue. And people like me, people like Kalel, benefit from these atrocities without speaking out against them. In Kalel's argument, she presents us with an average point of view and then expects us to follow it, when in fact there is no average point of view. I found two funny yet informative articles that illustrate my point about the average person at the center of Kalel's argument. One is from Lifehack, and it's called 10 Common Characteristics of Average People. And I'll provide, just the links here and in the comments section below. The other is from the Public Medievalist, and I thought it was just so funny. It's called There Is No Average Person by Dr. Paul B. Sturtevant. Again, providing the link here. So, enough on that. I'm going to shout out for my musical selection today, the artist Mo, and the song is Kamikaze. Just a really fun song. I thought I'd offer that on the tail end of this rather, bleak post for today. I hope it hasn't been too preachy, but again, I hope it's given you some food for thought. Again, that you'll continue to investigate, hear what people have to say, but really go in and investigate and see what might be behind some of the messages that are being offered here on YouTube and in other places in the world. That said, this is Reg checking out on day 57 of my 60-day raw food challenge. I hope you have an amazing day. Continue to love yourself, and peace.
And I love myself.
The world is a ghetto, big